Hi, everyone. For those I haven't met yet, I'm Shannon Lukowski. I'm with OCFS in the Division of Youth Development and Partnerships for Success. In that role, I work with runaway homeless youth programs throughout New York State and also with the Safe Harbor New York program. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you encounter any IT issues with the presentations, you can email info@welfareresearch.org and help will be sent your way. If you have an IT issue during a presentation, you can type the issue into the chat box and one of us will assist you. If you encounter any IT issues with the presentations, they're being recorded and will be posted in HSLC for future viewings. Certificates will be issued after the summit by request. If you need a certificate, please send your name and email address to Christine Anderson here at OCFS. Next week, we will send out a post-summit survey. Please use this opportunity to provide feedback about the event so we can incorporate it into future sessions going forward. Lastly, participants will automatically be muted during each presentation. Each presenter has about 45 minutes of content, including an interactive activity, and will reserve about 15 minutes for Q&A. If you try to hold questions until the end, and then the presenter will get to as many questions as time allows. If we do not get to your question, we do have the ability to see questions after the presentation, and we'll get to your answer as quickly as possible. With that, I'd like to introduce our presenter. Today we have with us Kaylee Fazer. She's the Safe Harbor Coordinator for Chautauqua County. Through her work at the Child Advocacy Program of Chautauqua County, she raises awareness about the realities of human trafficking and the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Kaylee works directly with youth survivors of trafficking and those identified to be at risk. And she can be found leading trauma-informed yoga practices at the Child Advocacy Program, as well as throughout Chautauqua County. We are so excited to have her with us today. And with that, Kaylee, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Shannon. If you all bear with me for just a moment as I get ready to share my screen here. All right, so we should be all set. So as Shannon said, my name is Kaylee Fazer, and I'm a licensed master social worker employed by the Child Advocacy Program of Chautauqua County as the Safe Harbor Coordinator. In my role, I work with CAP's partner agencies and other youth-serving organizations in the county to provide education and assist with the implementation of policies related to the screening, identification, and intervention of potential trafficking cases. I do a lot of community outreach and awareness, and I provide direct services to trafficked and at-risk youth in both individual counseling and group settings. So let's jump right in, and I'll give you some background on our Safe Harbor program. So let's see, first, to give you a little bit of context about Chautauqua County, we are New York State's most western county, bordered by Lake Erie on the west and Pennsylvania to the south, with Erie County and Buffalo being to our northern border. As of 2019, Chautauqua County had a population of almost 127,000 people. Its largest city is Jamestown with a population of just under 30,000, and then Dunkirk with almost 12,000 folks. Our CAC, the Child Advocacy Program of Chautauqua County, has 2 offices, one at each end of the county, and we cover quite a large rural geographic area. So our Safe Harbor program started in late 2016, and at that time, the Safe Harbor Coordinator worked with schools to implement and provide age-appropriate trafficking and CSEC education. And we found out right away that we were having way more disclosures than we had anticipated. So that prompted us to have a needs assessment done. We worked in collaboration with Niagara University, and our practice determined, the results of that needs assessment and our practice determined that our community needed more professional training and community outreach and awareness about trafficking, and we needed to streamline policies for screening, reporting, and intervening in these cases. Last year, about a year ago, the Safe Harbor program moved to our CAC and I was hired as the coordinator. I was determined and enthusiastic and ready to do my part to end human trafficking. And so I drafted a thorough and albeit aggressive work plan with goals of expanding the program's awareness efforts and creating a youth advisory board to solicit the opinions and perspectives of those kids who are actually at risk for exploitation. I was excited to make 2020 Safe Harbor's year. As I mentioned, our 2 main goals were increasing our awareness and creating the Youth Advisory Board. And at this point in early 2020, since its inception in 2016, the Safe Harbor program of Chautauqua County had received 96 referrals, and we had trained 1,567 professionals and community members had been trained to identify the signs of human trafficking and to understand the dynamics at play and the folks involved and how to report or intervene. And then things changed. So in March, COVID came and we had to re-envision our plans. So I was asking myself these questions: how can Safe Harbor be relevant in the world with all of this wild craziness going on? And how can we continue to work towards our outreach and awareness goals with stay-at-home orders and social distancing measures in place? And at the same time, I, like probably many of you who are listening to this today, was glued to my Facebook timeline on the lookout for COVID updates and new information. So I thought this might be the time to prioritize Safe Harbor's social media presence. At this point in March, we had a Facebook page, however, just a humble following of only about 80 people following our page. So I want to pause right here for a minute and bring up our first poll. I'm wondering, all of you who are participating in this webinar today, prior to the pandemic, was your agency using social media to engage with the community? So if you would go ahead and answer number one, yes, if you are engaging in social media, or no. And then if you do choose to answer number one, if you said yes, that you were using social media, then if you can move on to question number two. So what platforms were you using? And I think this will maybe allow you to check multiple platforms. If you're not able to, just go ahead and pick the social media platform that was most relevant to your organization. So just take a minute to go ahead and do that. I'm not sure. I think the results will pop up on my screen, but I'm not sure. Just kind of gives me kind of an idea of where everybody else is with their social media. All right, so moving on. So with that in mind, let's see, we have some results here. So it looks like 63% of you were using social media, and the majority of folks were using Facebook, with some people using Instagram as well. Cool, thank you. So like I said, we had a Facebook page, just about 80 people following. So with that information, what can we do to make, what I was thinking is, what can we do to make our social media and our Facebook page more relevant? And these are some of the things that we came up with. So let's see, of course, I continue to share trafficking information, and I'll tell you more about that in just a minute. But I also felt like this was an opportunity for us to connect with other community organizations and potentially reach more people by providing education and promoting wellness. So point one is we posted and shared county-specific COVID-19 and other community resources. For example, our local internet company, DFT Communications, was offering free internet service for Chautauqua County students. So one of the things that we did was share their posts, tag folks that we know that work with kids and students to kind of broaden that information and share that information. We also shared information on free legal services that were available in our county, unemployment benefits and food banks, and updates from the Chautauqua County Health Department. This helped us to establish Safe Harbor as a critical, dependable community resource amidst a time of a bit of chaos. And then secondly, we wanted to share and post self-care tools. So keep in mind that all content doesn't need to be trafficking related. At the onset of the pandemic and throughout, we wanted to highlight the importance of self-care and healthy coping skills. So I'll talk about this more in a minute, but we use this space on Facebook to offer free yoga classes, mindfulness sessions, information on emotional freedom technique or tapping, as well as other self-care tools, articles, and videos. And then third, probably our most important point here was that when we were doing all of these posts, we were tagging colleagues, CPS caseworkers, school counselors, school nurses, teachers, etc., other people who are using social media to connect directly with youth or who are in contact with at-risk youth already. So to be really honest with you, I reached out to my family and friends. I reached out to the colleagues that we work with at our CAC and asked them to share our posts. I asked them, it was okay, can I tag you in this? And can you share this on your timeline, etc. And in my opinion, I think this was key to raising awareness on Facebook and staying relevant in the midst, on the minds of our biggest referral sources. We didn't leave it at just that though. I was strategic about the trafficking information I was sharing as well. So let's see. So we did this thing that I like to refer to as Trafficking Tuesdays. To address our awareness goals, I decided to go live on Facebook each Tuesday with a mini presentation on trafficking. This was personally a big step for me. While I'm familiar with and comfortable speaking in front of large groups, it felt different to record myself speaking into my laptop at my home office. But as with everything, a little practice went a long way, and each week I was more comfortable going live on Facebook. Some of the topics I talked about were, I did an introduction to the Safe Harbor program and the services that are available at the Child Advocacy Program. I discussed the vulnerabilities, risk factors, and protective factors involved with trafficking. I talked about red flags and warning signs, grooming, the dynamics of human trafficking, who are the survivors, the traffickers, and the buyers. I spoke about online sexual risk-taking and the intersection of race and trafficking, as well as trafficking in the LGBTQ+ community. I talked about best practices for working with survivors, and I shared information about other local resources, for example, our local runaway and homeless youth shelter, our Safe House. So as with other types of posts that I had mentioned, I encouraged colleagues, friends, and family to share them widely. Several of our Trafficking Tuesday videos were seen by over 1,000+ viewers. Side note, I didn't really use this hashtag Trafficking Tuesdays. That was more of just little way for me to have fun with this. But we saw these videos, they were being shared widely, and as I'll talk about, and how this has led to other opportunities for training out of this. So I will get to that. So also on social media, as I had mentioned, we did a lot of self-care. So I devoted Wednesdays to be our SelfCare Wednesday day. And prevention is everything. It was incredibly important to me that the program continued to promote personal wellness, especially in this time with so much social isolation and collective anxiety. So cue SelfCare Wednesdays. I taught live trauma-informed yoga. I led mindfulness practices and shared several other self-help resources. As a registered yoga teacher, I felt that my particular skill set could be helpful to our page's audience, and particularly our audience is really comprised of a lot of the allied professionals and colleagues that we work with in these youth serving organizations. So I knew that, always compassion fatigue and burnout are definitely a major issue when we talk about social services and working with at-risk youth and people that have experienced trauma. So with that in mind, as well as like the current collective anxiety, the chaos that was going on in our world, we really felt that this was a way to just highlight how important prevention is and how important it is to continue to take care of yourself amidst what might be going on around you. And we also did some youth interviews. So going into 2020, we had planned to form a youth advisory board. Prior to actually recruiting local youth to serve on our board, we had thought about doing a survey with middle and high school students to gauge their understanding of trafficking and exploitation. We had planned to collaborate with the Chautauqua County Youth Bureau to create and disseminate the surveys to our county schools. However, when this kind of crept up on us in March, we had that quick switch to virtual learning, and we knew that it was not the right time to ask the schools to do something else for us. And that wasn't the avenue we could take. So I began facilitating these conversations with kids already engaged with services at the CAC and youth I know through my volunteer work. Then I reached out to folks that I know personally and professionally with tweens and teens of their own, and I asked them for permission to speak with their kids about exploitation and trafficking, which in turn led to an interview, which was posted on our Facebook page, where I spoke with a local 14-year-old about how she stays safe online. So I'm going to share with you a clip of my interview with Casey. So here is a little bit of Casey and I that was posted on our. What advice would you give to adults, to those of us who are working with kids, and particularly, about the internet, and like we're having all these conversations about staying safe online and avoiding online predators and all this stuff, but I really think that you and your generation know a lot more about navigating the internet than I do and some of my colleagues and peers. So from an expert, what do you think would be helpful for us to know?
Well, I know us teens really rely on the internet at least I do, for a lot. I've actually learned from the internet, and I feel like I've grown from it. I feel that if you are aiming towards making teens feel like comfortable. Just I would make sure I would know how much it's not that bad and the internet is really not that bad of a place. I definitely has a bad side, but um, I feel like it's not as bad as people sometimes make it out to be.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that especially in your generation, the internet is such a source for connection, and especially now in our current climate with the COVID pandemic, we're seeing all these great ways that we are able to connect with our loved ones, both near and far, and still form these connections and have these relationships despite whatever distance or whatever factor might be in our way. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the Safe Harbor followers today, Casey?
I would just want to say you should stay safe on the internet. Make sure you know what you're dealing with. I know it's hard. It's hard for me, especially when I connect with people that I only know from the internet. Just make sure you stay safe.
Yeah, trust your gut and use your brain and watch out for those red flags.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Casey, and maybe we will have you back and talk again sometime. So that was just a little clip of our conversation. But since then, Casey has been recruiting other kids to participate in forthcoming group discussions about their perceptions of trafficking, exploitation, and online safety. So we're excited in the next couple of months to work again with Casey and these other teenagers that she has found that are willing to have these discussions with us. So while we were focusing more on raising awareness via Facebook, was it actually working? So you can see this chart here that shows our total page likes from January 2020 through to September 14th when I pulled this data. But as of January 1st, 2020, the Safe Harbor Facebook page had 80 likes. In April 1st, we were up to 105 likes. By July 1st, we had jumped quite a bit to 252 likes. And about 2 weeks ago, when I pulled this information, we had 340 likes. That's 4 times the amount of likes that we had started with at the beginning of the year. So while Facebook provides a platform for some awareness and education, it certainly does not substitute actual trainings. Soon after the shutdown, I transferred our presentations to a digital platform and began scheduling Zoom trainings. I created several different presentations that could be used for a variety of audiences, including a basic introduction to human trafficking training, a more in-depth skills training, and individualized trainings for certain agencies. On Zoom, I trained folks from the Chautauqua Institution, the Child Advocacy Program's Protective Parenting class, the Department of Health and Human Services CPS caseworkers, foster care caseworkers, and PINS caseworkers, that's Persons in Need of Supervision Diversion Program. I trained our CAC's new MDT partners, folks from Chautauqua Opportunities, which has housing, childcare, and other social services. I trained the clinicians at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center's Behavioral Health Department in Chautauqua County, and that's composed of chemical dependency and mental health clinicians for adolescents and adults. I trained employees from the Resource Center, which provides services to people with disabilities, and the life skills group at our local runaway and homeless youth shelter. Upcoming, I have several trainings coming in the next couple of weeks and month or so, including a professional group that advocates for women's rights, a health home agencies, and more mental health clinicians. For several of these trainings, I co-presented with a Department of Health and Human Services foster care caseworker. And that was really great to liven things up and not just have it me, speaking to a group of people for an hour or so. And she was able to offer a different perspective than I was. So it really made these trainings, in my opinion, more comprehensive. We also did YouTube uploads. I recorded trainings and uploaded them to our YouTube channel and shared them with agencies that could not dedicate a specific time for training due to their employees' schedules. So There's a couple large social service organizations in our county that have folks working around the clock or in several different locations, different schedules. So that worked really well to record these like 45-minute, hour-long conversation or trainings and then send them out or upload them to our YouTube channel, send out the link to my contacts at these organizations so that they could pass them on to their staff. And then also probably one of the coolest things we did was we had a live outdoor and live streamed event. So this was organized in direct response to the increased discussion about trafficking online and amidst our social circles that we had been hearing about in the past couple of months. I, as well as some of Safe Harbor's allied professionals, wanted to set the record straight on the realities of trafficking in our county, and we wanted to provide a tangible way in which concerned community members can help support the cause. So I collaborated with a representative from a local faith-based organization, Jessica from Conduit Ministries, who was actually the Safe Harbor coordinator before I was, as well as an investigator with the Sheriff's Office and the foster care caseworker with the county's Department of Health and Human Services. And we planned and executed a socially distant outdoor awareness event. The training was held at a tent on the lawn of Conduit Ministries and was simultaneously live streamed on Conduit's Facebook page. We had over 50 community members in attendance, and Jessica from Conduit Ministries and myself are working together to host a follow-up community action team meeting later in October. So far we have 10 folks registered to attend that meeting, and we will continue to provide education about trafficking, and we're gonna supply our volunteers with literature, posters, and brochures that they can distribute throughout the county, perhaps to places like gas stations, laundromats, and hotels. So we wanted to give all of these concerned citizens that we have in Chautauqua County some actual tangible work they can do to help mitigate trafficking. So we're excited to see what comes out of that. So since the end of March, to about 2 weeks ago when I pulled this data, we've trained 117 professionals and community members. We were unable to really count how many of the YouTube uploads were viewed. You can see like how many it's viewed, but oftentimes they were viewed in like multiple people at a time, so we really can't gauge that. But out of the Zoom trainings and the live outdoor event we've trained over 117 people. So now I want to switch gears and talk to you a little bit about Safe Harbor's transition to telehealth. So since the middle of March, we've had 21 new youth referred to the Safe Harbor program. And of course, not all of these kids are receiving services at the CAC. But when appropriate, we connect them with a therapist here, either myself or another one of our counselors, or we connect them with another agency if that's a more appropriate fit. So as I mentioned, I provide direct services to trafficked and at-risk youth. And I had been seeing clients in person for individual counseling sessions. And shortly after the onset of the shutdown in March, I transitioned to counseling via Zoom. And one thing that was really helpful for me was that I participated in MUSC's TFCVT telehealth webinar, which helped me to create telehealth policies and establish best practices. Further, that training provided several counseling activities and resources that were already adapted to be used online. So it was really a pretty seamless transition. Within a week or so of the shutdown, we had Zoom accounts. We were figuring out these policies and procedures and adapting the therapeutic activities that we do to be used in a Zoom type of setting. So we also have our virtual girls group. So prior to COVID, we had been planning to start a girls group for girls at risk of exploitation. And when the pandemic hit, we had to pivot and decided to try to run the group online. So we were able to outfit several girls with tablets, activating only Zoom, and set up space in both of our offices to host a few girls in person in a safe, socially distant way. Each Tuesday afternoon, the small groups in our offices Zoom together with the girls at home, and we practice mindfulness skills, engage in a therapeutic activity, and then end the session with trauma-informed yoga. We have had consistently about 15 girls participating each week, with more and more wanting to jump in as we go along. So I want to go over some successes, challenges, and opportunities for growth. So starting with our social media outreach and awareness, our focus on Facebook led to increased traffic to the Safe Harbor page, and it increased the amount of followers. Initially in the spring, while I was working from home, trainings and outreach were slow to start up kind of, and not as many referrals coming in right away. So I had a lot of time to think of and share creative content. However, I'm finding this is a challenge that as my workload has picked back up, I haven't been able to devote as much time to our Facebook page as I'd like. Which brings me to my next challenge. I have a pretty limited understanding of how to best utilize Facebook analytics. As you saw a couple slides ago, our likes have increased since I've engaged more on this platform. However, I still need to learn how to better understand Facebook insights so that I can be more effective and strategic in our social media outreach. Also, with Facebook, while we've been somewhat successful in reaching out to adults, we are not directly reaching youth. Our Facebook audience is comprised of parents, professionals who work with youth, and to be honest, my own family and friends. So fans of our Facebook page are 89% female, 11% male. The largest represented age bracket has 26% of our followers, and those are folks between the ages of 45 years old and 54 years old. Only 0.293% are between the ages of 13 and 17, and just 4% of our audience is between the ages of 18 and 24. So clearly, I'm not connecting with teens and tweens on Facebook. So I want to throw another poll your way. I'm wondering for this next question, is your agency connecting with youth on social media? So if you would go ahead and answer number one, is your agency or organization connecting with youth on social media? And if you answer yes to that question, you can move to question number two. And what social media platforms are you using to connect with kids? So again, I think this will allow you to check multiple options. So go ahead and fill that out, please. We'll take a moment. Okay, so it looks like 38% of folks are connecting directly with youth and 62% are not. And it looks like Facebook again is the primary platform. So great, thank you for that. I appreciate your feedback. And I recognize that we certainly have an opportunity here to reach youth, and maybe Facebook isn't the place to do that. So over the next few months, I'm gonna be really thinking about what other platforms might that be and what does that look like, and then teaching myself how to use those other platforms. So while we haven't been overly successful in reaching youth, the influx in traffic to our Facebook page has been successful in that it has led to increased community awareness about human trafficking. And in turn, that's resulted in requests for more comprehensive trainings from community organizations. So we were able to adapt our presentations and continue to provide training virtually to allied professionals and other youth serving professionals. And due to our Facebook outreach, we were able to connect with agencies that had not previously worked with Safe Harbor. I've had several clinicians and advocates and other folks from these organizations reach out to me to say that I saw your video on Facebook. Can you come train us in a more formal style about human trafficking? So that has been awesome. But though we weren't able to train as many folks as we had anticipated this year. We're continuing to identify other agencies, community partners, and new referral sources that we can train virtually. And we'll continue to do that until we're able to train in person again, or maybe this will continue on for a while. Either way, we're still looking for other places to get the word out about human trafficking. Also, we're in the process of planning a virtual training in collaboration with the National Criminal Justice Training Center's Amber Alert Training and Technical Assistance Program. That training, titled Community Response to High-Risk Missing and Sex Trafficking Victims, will be open to our multidisciplinary partners, allied professionals, and other youth-serving professionals in Chautauqua County. So we're excited about that. That was also a challenge. We had an in-person, the same training scheduled to be happening in person in this past April. So of course that didn't happen, and we still want to be able to provide our partners with this information. So we're excited to be working on that planning to get that going in a virtual platform. And we're continuing to explore other ways of outreach. So switch gears again, I want to touch a little bit on the successes and challenges that we've had with telehealth. Shortly after the start of the shutdown, we were up and running on Zoom. The quick transition from in-person counseling to telehealth allowed us to continue providing services to youth identified to be at risk for trafficking, and it allowed us to initiate services with newly referred youth. Further, our virtual girls group has helped our young clients not only in the therapeutic sense, but also it's allowed them to stay socially active and involved with their peers during this time of widespread social isolation. In our rural county, this option has been significant in engaging youth and their families. Obviously, the pandemic in and of itself has hindered many folks from coming into the office for treatment, whether that be because of stay-at-home orders or from personal preference to remain out of public spaces. And additionally, like the rural landscape and geographic makeup of Chautauqua County, coupled with the lack of sufficient public transportation, has long posed a challenge in keeping families engaged in services. The high poverty rates in our area and the social factors that affect one's health-related behaviors have also historically impacted client retention. And now the pandemic has become a hindrance to in-person counseling. So even though our office is fully open now and many families are coming in for treatment, we still see that there are families that are hesitant to come into an office setting. Thus, telehealth has provided families with a choice, and I hope that we will continue to utilize this technology to address those other factors that I mentioned that affects a family's engagement in our program. So in conclusion, my biggest takeaways from our experiences throughout the pandemic have been to remain relevant, but also don't inundate your audience with information. Use videos, tag people, and collaborate with other organizations to bring more awareness to your project. And lastly, don't be afraid to try something out of the box. On the surface, it might seem like a live streamed yoga class has nothing to do with human trafficking, but these videos drove a significant amount of folks to our page. And in turn, it has resulted in more actual training opportunities and thus more awareness. So with that, I will open this up for questions. Are any questions from folks in the audience?
Hi guys, Christine here. Thank you so much, Kaylee, that was great. I just want to give people a quick reminder of where to ask the questions since you're all muted. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A icon and it has little word bubbles above it and you can type your questions there. Also, if you are struggling with that, because I know that everyone's laptop is a little different, feel free to type them in the chat box as Kaylee can also see those. This was a lot of really, really great information, and I love the idea of thinking out the box. I think my favorite component was the interview you did with Casey. I always think it's so important, and we here at OCFS are firm believers in youth voice and keeping that a part of everything we do, because we can't serve the youth without knowing their input, right? So I guess, I know you said you recruited them initially with community organizations and youth you already knew. How did you go about getting their parents or guardians on board? Was there like a permission slip? Because I know that's really important, that we want to make sure the adults in their lives are aware of what they're also participating in.
Right. So the folks, or the youth that I have spoken to, Casey included, and I had mentioned that I had spoken with some kids from my personal volunteer work. Yes, I spoke with their parents and had them sign something basically saying that they were allowing their child to speak with me, and in Casey's case that I was able to share that video to our Facebook page. I didn't anticipate sharing that with all of you. So as I was preparing this presentation, I reached back out to her mother and had that conversation and got her written permission to show that video. But yeah, I think that I 100% agree with that youth voice is so incredibly important. And though these are such sensitive topics that, Casey and I are working together to recruit other kids to have these conversations with the disclaimer that I will not be recording those conversations. So that I think has been helpful in getting parental approval, so that yes, we can have these conversations and I'll be able to debrief with parents about what we speak about, but it's not going to be displayed in a public way.
Wonderful. So
I can't see the chat box while I'm sharing my screen. Oh wait,
I can tell you. So there's a question in the Q&A. It says, what have you found effective for getting members of the public to come to informational sessions? So I guess kind of like what marketing
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the biggest things has been tagging and asking other people to share these posts because, so like we had that live streamed and live awareness event at Conduit Ministries, and that was really in direct response to a lot of the information that was circulating on the internet in like July or August about human trafficking, a lot of misinformation. And we had a lot of people in our community that knew either about Safe Harbor or knew that there was some kind of human trafficking thing going on here, reaching out to either myself, to other partners that are already involved in this project about like, what do you think about this? Is this true? Blah, blah, blah. And we kind of came together to say like, okay, we need to, this is an opportunity for us to address this issue. And so we all kind of went to our own different platforms. So it wasn't just, I think it's all about collaboration. It wasn't just me on the Safe Harbor page posting this stuff. It was reaching out to people that are already considered to be what's the word I'm thinking about? Like dependable resources in the community. So Conduit Ministries has a large faith following. And so they posted, you know, they were the ones that hosted the event on Facebook, which I think was huge. I shared it on the Safe Harbor page and my personal page. Others did the same, but they've already established who they are in the community. And so I think it really is about making those connections. And I didn't speak about this, but prior to COVID, we did a live awareness presentation with a different faith-based community in a different part of our county. That was in January for like National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And we had a huge turnout there too, about 75 folks. And the same thing is that organization, Breathe Life of Western New York, they hosted this, they posted, you know, they hosted the event and did a lot of the marketing. Well, I helped them and, you know, assisted with that. It was, I think both of these events were very successful because I was working with the community, with organizations that are already well established in the community.
Wonderful. That's a lot of information. I hope everybody wrote that down. We have a few more questions. Which of the social media platforms would be most effective in reaching teens and tweens according to research? Would any social service organization be welcome and not blocked or stopped by the host? Now, you can maybe shed some light on this for me, Kaylee, because I was always under the impression, and this may be my ignorance, that I know there's ways around it, that you had to be 18 to be on Facebook. So to me, it's logical that you didn't get many people under the age of 18. However, my 15-year-old has enlightened me that many of her friends have Facebook pages.
Yes. Yeah, so you do. I think the actual age for Facebook might be like 15 or 16. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I have worked with a lot of youth, as I'm sure a lot of you have, that are much younger than that are utilizing Facebook. And while that's the age, all we have to do to verify that is type in our birthday. So we can get around that for sure. I think though, as I talk more about this, so when a lot of the counseling I do is primarily trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and also we incorporate a lot of online safety and building digital resilience in those conversations. So I'm talking to the kids that I work with, who are primarily girls, the girls that I'm working with, about their social media use, and what platforms do you use, how do you use it, who do you friend, who do you talk to, what do you post, those kind of things. And we have these conversations, and like a lot of them might have Facebook where they connect to their family or older people in their lives, like family, friends, etc. But it seems as if the kids that I know here in Chautauqua County are really not using Facebook like we are as adults. And so they seem to be using TikTok and Snapchat primarily, sometimes Instagram. And that's all. Like the thing I think the question says something about is like, how do you as like a social service organization do that? Well, I know like we can create accounts for Safe Harbor, but then it's also like, this is the question that I've been asking myself for a while. How do I like think in the way a 14-year-old might think and want to listen to this stuff and want to see this stuff? So these are conversations that I am having with the youth I work with, and that I want to keep having with these little like youth advisory boards that we're putting together, is how can I, as the 30-something-year-old, really get through to you in a platform that's not made for me? So I don't know, but that's what I'm going to be trying to figure out.
Yeah, and that's where that youth voice comes in, right? I mean,
Yep.
we have to figure out, what do they want to hear? what will engage them so when we can use that to our advantage. I'm being told that, just like you said, many kids aren't really on Facebook anymore, which makes me feel ancient, but that's okay. They use Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram more than Facebook. So that is great to know. 2 more questions. Jeremiah said, social media is used so much for interaction, communication, and information. How can the youth be sure to tell if they are being used for information, or how do they make sure they're being questioned by a reliable source? I hope I summed that up correctly, Jeremiah. If I didn't, I apologize. Key questions they should maybe be aware of, or red flags they should be aware of, so they can be sure that they're talking to a trusted adult. It's a great question.
Right, so that is a great question. And that was a conversation that Casey, the youth that was in this video, and I had. So when I had been talking to Casey, Casey's mom actually interned with me, so that's how I know Casey. And we had been talking really since the shutdown started as to like Casey, okay, so we had said I wanted to disseminate this survey to youth to kind of gauge their knowledge of trafficking. And it was
Right.
Casey that told me, well, if you send that out, we're not going to answer that. Like, we don't know who you are. We don't, and I was like, yes, that's awesome. Like, I love that response, because we don't want kids engaging
Right.
with people they don't know and in that context. So it was great to hear that it was, from her say that. And so that's when I started to think, okay, so I'm not going to get much traction by sending out some like Survey Monkey thing to a bunch of kids. It could go through the schools, and they would, Casey and other kids that I talked to said that, yeah, they would participate in something like that if the school sent it out. But I just didn't feel that it was appropriate of me to put that on the schools at this time, given all of their other, the heaviness of what they were doing. So I think that if we will continue to go forward and do a survey, which I would like to do, and reach more kids, that I would like to do that in collaboration with the Youth Bureau, because they do have an established presence in our county, and then using again through the schools to avoid those red flags, because we want to model what we're teaching about online safety as well. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I think it is important that we practice what we preach, right? We're trying to tell kids, don't give out your personal information, be wary of who you talk to, and then, but here's an online survey and I need
Right.
your answers and you have no idea who I am, right? We look
Exactly.
a little bit hypocritical. So that's very important. Another question, do you utilize the youth that you work with as social media ambassadors to get information out on their personal platforms? So like, are they encouraged to share, like, could Casey have shared the video if she had wanted to and had obviously the appropriate adult permissions?
Absolutely. If Casey wanted to and had permission, I actually think she did share it. I know her mom did, but I'm not asking them to. That's
right.
I don't feel that that's their job. It's my job to do the marketing for Safe Harbor. And while I'm, we're having these conversations and we're talking about the importance of raising awareness about this, and how I do want the youth that I know, that I work with, to know, like, this is important information, and I want them to share that with their friends to protect the other people in their lives, and to prevent anything like trafficking or exploitation from happening to them, and though it's not their job. So whatever they're comfortable sharing, if they want to, absolutely. But I'm not really putting that on them, because I don't see that as their responsibility.
Great. And I actually have a personal question. So you talked about your Trafficking Tuesdays earlier on in your presentation, which I thought was genius. Are those libraries somewhere? You have to forgive, again, my ignorance. I'm not a Facebook aficionado. So are those libraries somewhere so people could go back? So let's say they tuned in on like week 4, but they wanted to go back and watch weeks 1, 2, and 3. Are they able to do that?
Yeah, they are. I am also not a Facebook aficionado, so they are on our Facebook page, but people may have to scroll for a long time to find them. And I would love to set it up into, here's a photo album or something of videos or whatnot. But that's beyond my current level of understanding Facebook for business. So Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I would like to do, is to make that more accessible. And I'm also realizing too that like it had been a while since I've done that. So I posted a live video last week. And I also recognize that a lot of these, like you can use it more than once. So I started doing this in April. So I feel that it's time that I could repost some of these
Right.
videos as well.
That's great. And a great question from one of our downstate Safe Harbor partners. Do you want us to share and join your Facebook group?
Yes, please. And I will join in and share yours as well. I think that has also been helpful in that, like, OCFS has a Facebook page that I share regularly. And I think the more, and you know, I know that like OCFS put out those what's the word I want to use? Basically, there's like photographs with information about trafficking with the hashtag truth about trafficking. So I've been using those, and like also just another element of Facebook, which makes it a little easier. And like I said, I don't really understand Facebook, so I'm learning as we go, but there's publishing tools where you can plan things ahead of time. So I usually once a week will take a half hour to set up the next week or so of posts that I want to do. So I have the OCFS photographs. I have articles from Polaris, articles from other like reputable sources that and videos and photographs and stuff like that I kind of just go to. So that has been helpful, I think, in providing factual information.
Great. We do actually have another quick question, and you can answer this. I'm not aware. Is that publishing tool free, or does Facebook charge for that?
Nope, it's free. And I will find, so there is an option to like boost your posts on Facebook, and I've tried to do that. And I find this so interesting that they have blocked pretty much every post I've tried to pay for to boost, because trafficking is one of those social issues where there's so much misinformation out there. So I kind of am happy and proud of Facebook for that. And that I've had to go through a lot of steps to verify my identity, and it's still not there. We've been working on it for like almost a month, but they've sent like letters to my personal, like my home, not even my work address, where there will be a code in there. Then I have to go to a website, enter this code, and it'll lead me to another thing. I had to like upload my driver's license to Facebook, and then I'm in the process of waiting for another form for them with another code to move on to the next process, so that eventually I will hopefully be verified as somebody who is speaking truth to this issue, and I will be able to share those posts more widely. But right now there's kind of a kibosh on that. So I just find that very interesting.
I do too. And I remember exactly what you're talking about. A few months ago, it was a very hotbed issue, and you would see post after post after post, and then it would be a post about how the information in the last post was wrong. So, you know, they're doing their best, I guess.
Right.
We have a tip. If you utilize a hashtag on your post, it will help people find the content easier. So you would hashtag Trafficking Tuesday, or you could give it some other clever hashtag. And a few requests for what would the videos be under on Facebook. So I guess it's whatever the name of your Facebook.
Yeah, so we are, I should have wrote this down ahead of time, but I think it's at Safe Harbor CHQ. Or it's at CHQ Safe Harbor, all one word.
We'll figure it out. I'll find it.
We'll figure it out, and we'll let y'all.
I will share it in the materials so that people, when the materials are disseminated at the end of Summit, so it'll probably be sometime next week, so we can, we have it, CHQ Safe Harbor from Colleen Curtin in the chat for everyone. So we can make sure everyone gets the information. And I do know that as the program manager for Safe Harbor, that there are a few other counties that are taking your lead and creating Facebook pages and collaborating with other community organizations and other local partners to create Facebook pages and share from each other for the same reason. So consider yourself a trendsetter. And be very proud. I don't think there's any other questions, so I'm going to hold for just about 3 seconds. If anybody has any other questions, please submit them in. Kaylee will put up her contact information for all of you, and I will also, Shalini says, can we do a shameless plug for all our social media platforms? Sure, go ahead, type it in the chat. The best part about an event like this is that we can collaborate with each other. We can share ideas. That's the whole point. We want you to learn from each other and build off of each other. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we make our programs great. As I said, we will try to get people all the materials next week with the survey. Oh, one last question. You have time for one more, Kaylee?
Sure thing.
Awesome. Can you just remind me of how you indirectly drove traffic to your page? You said something about unrelated topics.
Yeah, so I think like one of the things we did was I was posting live streamed yoga, and I tagged all of the people I know that do yoga and asked them, and a lot of this I did on my personal page. Like I would do something on Safe Harbor and then share it from my personal page and tag people just in my life, in my social network. And that in turn drove more people to our site. And also like not just yoga, we did like a lot of other self-care stuff, a lot of stuff about trauma, a lot of stuff about different interventions, anything that might be relevant to who our audience is, which is mostly comprised of like our referral sources and youth serving professionals in our community.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kaylee. That was wonderful. I'm so glad you could join us. We have websites and stuff flowing through the chat box, so I'm going to leave the chat open for a minute. I do just want to once again thank everyone for participating today and earlier this week. It truly is wonderful to see all of you together, and we hope to see more of you tomorrow. So thank you again, Kaylee. Thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.